Hi everyone, and welcome to Autism and Neurodiversity Coaching's Neurodiverse Universe podcast with myself, Ben Holmes from Autism and Neurodiversity Coaching. Today's guest is Dea Fileva, an ADHD coach. Is that right? How do you prefer to refer to in terms of your work? Is that right?
Yeah, that's a great question. ADHD coach is fine. Also I'm a therapist, so I'm very big on the kind of healing aspect of it, but I do both coaching and therapy, so both are
Yeah,
fine.
that's fine. So welcome, Dea. So as normal, I'll ask questions I normally ask, and then we'll sort of take it from there, see how it goes. So first question is, when were you actually diagnosed as having ADHD?
I was diagnosed a few years ago, as an adult, so I was just about turning 30, I believe. And yeah, it never even occurred to me before. And even when someone suggested I may have it, I said, that sounds like a crazy idea because we think of people with ADHD as people who are, bad at school and kind of very, hyperactive and all of that. And if anything, it's caused very quiet. I was the opposite of hyperactive, and I came first most of the time, like pretty much all the time in primary, secondary school. And then, yeah, so it just didn't make any sense at all to me until I was diagnosed.
Yeah. And when you got the diagnosis, what did that mean to you? Like, did it make your life better, worse, no difference?
Yeah, great question. It explained everything, actually. So before I went for the diagnosis, like I said, it didn't make any sense. I said to my friend, I'm crazy, like I was the best in my school. But he said, yeah, I was also really good at school, but I had a diagnosis and it has nothing to do with that, actually. So just go and check it out. And so I did, because at the time, what happened was that I was really struggling with my mental health, essentially. I had received a generalized anxiety diagnosis from my GP, but that it just didn't seem right. I think that's what often happens with people who eventually get a diagnosis, that you get diagnosed with anxiety, depression, some mood disorder, sometimes even a personality disorder, and it still doesn't feel quite right. It doesn't feel that that's quite you. And when you do go for a diagnosis, it just explains everything. And that's what happened to me. I went for a diagnosis, and I started reading about it. I thought, yeah, that's me. Why didn't no one tell me this before? And I was so touched by the fact that I finally felt that I wasn't weird and different like the way I used to until then. There are other people who are exactly like that make decisions that don't seem to make sense to the rest of the people, that make impulsive decisions, that just forget things that are important, but that just slip your mind somehow. And people tell you, how can you forget about this? And I'm like, I don't know. And all of this, all the impulsivity, all the forgetting important things, the reactivity, the emotional kind of um, hyperarousal, technical term, or the emotional overreactivity, all of these things suddenly made sense to me. My mind running 100 miles an hour. Yeah, so it all made sense. And I was so touched that I thought, okay, I want to help people. So at the time, I thought I want to help people get diagnosed early so that they don't feel alone, because it's very lonely to think I'm so different, I'm weird, what's wrong with me? That's what I used to think until then. Before the diagnosis, I had done counseling for a few months, and I was going in with the idea, tell me what's wrong with me and let's fix it, because I'm a problem solver, right?
Yeah.
And so the diagnosis seemed to explain what was different with me. And these days now, I don't believe that there's anything wrong. It's just different. And actually,
Yeah.
it's a great thing to have once you learn to appreciate it and you know how to harness it.
Yeah. No, I can't agree more with that. So would you say it changed your life in a big way?
It did change my life in a big way. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I first was, I mean, there were quite a few things that happened around that time. And I was, like I said, I was also diagnosed with anxiety. So at that point, I started taking all that medication for ADHD, for anxiety. I have some panic attacks as well. So for that as well. So I had like 3 different types of medication that really got me to a better place at the time. But then one day I woke up, I thought, I don't want to be on medication for the rest of my life. I actually want to be me and not have to take this, you know, all these pills just to be better. You know, granted, I felt better. My executive functioning improved, my focus improved. I got a new job, I got a pay raise, but didn't make me any happier actually, or my life any more meaningful. So that's what triggered the beginning of the personal development journey. And that's when I found, I changed my doctor. And I was very lucky to find someone, friend of mine actually, same friend who suggested I may have ADHD. He actually found another psychiatrist who's also an alternative practitioner of emotional freedom technique and psychologist. So he was a very much holistically oriented person. And I was very lucky with that because that was my first experience with alternative therapy. My emotional world changed within a few days because we worked on a major kind of trauma that I hadn't processed. I didn't even realize I had it, but he suggested I may do based on my story. We worked on that within days. My emotional world had changed. And I thought, that is amazing. Why does nobody tell you this? So you can do all that without medication. Yeah, it's so definitely that was the beginning of the journey. And from then on, I was hooked. And I also started remembering that I always wanted to work for myself. I never really wanted to work for other people. So eventually I quit my job. I started my own business, which is a whole other journey and story in its own right, with its own ups and downs and roller coaster moments. But yes, it definitely changed my life. It definitely changed my life. And it's never been the same. It hasn't been the same since.
Yep. Yep. And how did your friends and family react to getting diagnosis? So like the ones who didn't know that you was ADHD, or maybe they all sort of suspected it, or you know, how did that play out once you said, yeah, I am ADHD?
Yeah. I think most people just don't have a huge awareness of it. They don't even take it seriously. And I understand that because even now I sometimes say, you know, it's not the ADHD, can be changed. The more you heal and you understand the neurotypical people, the more I have healed and understand neurotypical people, the more I understand how they kind of don't take it seriously, because it's such normal symptoms that are just worse in people with ADHD, like the distractibility and impulsivity and so on. So some people have been very understanding. My family, I think back in Bulgaria, there is not a huge emphasis on mental health, and they, you know, it's not being a big discussion. It's not something that they would have taken kind of to heart very seriously. I don't think there was ever a discussion. Yeah, with my friends, some. I mean, there is still a huge lack of understanding, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I think we'll come back to some of the points you've raised there in a bit. Just in terms of when you got diagnosed, what support have you received from anyone sort of outside of your family? Well, what support have you received in general, if anything? So you got the diagnosis. What happened after that? Because you mentioned medication before, but what, you know, was there any support out there once you got the diagnosis?
In terms of the system or friends or family?
Yeah,
Or
so like, yeah, so you got your diagnosis, then was there anything from the system at all? Was there any,
yeah.
you know, coaching support or you know, anything available?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I wish I knew then what I know now, of course, or I wish I met someone like you and me who could help me back then. I didn't seem to be, at least I wasn't aware of it. I'm sure there were people back then. That was only 5, 6, 7 years ago, 7 years ago now, I believe. I wasn't aware of any other support other than going to a psychiatrist or potentially a standard counselor. So it would have been great to be aware of that kind of support available. I was lucky, I suppose, because I could afford a private diagnosis here in the UK. So I never went through the NHS. I know that the NHS, it takes 6 months at least to be on a waiting list. So I didn't go through all of that. I was diagnosed privately, and right away I was prescribed, I believe I started with Elvans, which is the long-lasting kind of form of, and a different form of amphetamine as well. So that, I mean, initially that it was like putting on glasses. And that's what a lot of people report as well. Taking medication is like putting on glasses, because all of a sudden it's like all of these thoughts that are all over the place, you're able to channel them into one single direction, and you're still able to do many different things, but you do them sequentially as opposed to I do this and then I get distracted by something else and then I start something different and all of that. So that was helpful. And like so many people report, I even tried medication through my good friend who advised me through the whole journey before I got the diagnosis. Even Dr. Gabor Mate says he did the same. You try that through a friend, through whatever's available, and it helps you. And then that kind of confirms the self-diagnosis. Again, so many people self-medicate as well on different things. Caffeine is one, but not only. Like there are many different things that people self-medicate on, and then you try Ritalin or some similar drug and you think, oh, okay, that calms me down. I probably do have ADHD. And when I got a diagnosis, I got the Elvans medication, and like I said, that helped me just be less reactive, more focused, more concentrated throughout the day. And at the time, that was way before my kind of transformational journey. I thought, that's it. All you need is these drugs, this medication. You change your biochemistry, and that's great. And now I know you actually can change your biochemistry in many different and healthier ways. But in terms of support from the system, no, that was it. From then on, I went to the other psychiatrist, which is also a holistic therapist, like I mentioned, who started helping me deal with the trauma. And then because he was quite expensive, he sent me to a counselor to deal with other things from my childhood. However, that was just a counselor who mostly dealt with addictions and things like that, and relationships and things like that, but not specifically with ADHD. So again, that the ADHD coaching or therapy specifically, that wasn't, at least I wasn't aware of it. So I had my friend to support me, I had the doctors, I had the medication, and I was on a search for improvement, but I wouldn't say that was something that was obvious, that was easy to access, like ADHD coaching, for example. And as the NHS, I didn't even try to go through that.
No, I don't blame you. No, I don't blame you with that. And I think because of how many years ago as well there will have been less support anyway. Obviously, there's more support now because more people are aware of it, more coaches, therapists out there. But so yeah, I would imagine there'd be a lot less anyway. And again, a lot of people still don't understand ADHD now. So do you have any? Oh, sorry, go on.
Sorry, I missed that. A lot of people have been diagnosed, you say?
I can't remember what I said because I'm short-term memory.
Never mind. Never mind.
I think I was just saying, there's like going back to when you were diagnosed, there wouldn't have been as much support available anyway.
Yeah, probably.
I mean, I've seen what's happened the last, since COVID, really, how many more people there are out there who are doing coaching, therapy, training just in the last few years. So going back even further, there would have been a lot less out there, a lot less people supporting, and a lot less people with knowledge on the subject as well. So do you have any other conditions or disorders, or however you phrase that, that you know of? So you've touched on a few things. So other than ADHD, is there anything else that you have as well?
Yeah, yeah, the anxiety. I mean, I have been diagnosed with mild depression as well, back maybe that was in my early 20s. So a
Yeah.
few times, and that was the whole reason why I thought back then, okay, I've been prescribed these antidepressants 3 times in my life now. Maybe and the first 2 times I stopped taking them after a week or two. Maybe there's something there. Maybe it's time I just say, okay, I accept that. And I say, okay, I need this. So I think the first time I was diagnosed with mild depression. The second time it was something similar. Well, the second time was mild depression. The first time was anxiety. And then the third time was anxiety again, something like that. It never felt quite right. But I thought, okay, maybe it's time. That's it in terms of official diagnosis. I mean, I've had other kind of anxiety symptoms, obsessive compulsive behaviors as well. Nothing official, nothing that, where I struggle to get out of the house. But in
Yeah.
times of stress, yes, I have been. And as we just talked previously, I want things to be perfect, or, I want things to be done in a specific way, or, to start at a certain time. So I call that, like OCD behaviors.
Mhm.
And again, that comes, I mean, OCD is a need to control what outside of you. If you can control, if you feel out of control inside of your own, if you don't feel in control of your own thoughts, you have this need to control what's outside of you, right? So again, all of these things, whether it's anxiety, OCD, to me, there's such an overemphasis on diagnosis. I recently put out a few videos on this. There's such an overemphasis on diagnosis, and there's such overlap. If you read the DSM-5, the Diagnostic Manual of Diagnosis, there's such an overlap because it's just clusters of symptoms put together, right? And oh, you have a diagnosis, so we can treat you with this and this medication. But the root cause of all these things is, in my opinion, some sort of trauma, some sort of developmental trauma, usually some trauma that starts early in the early childhood. And depending on how you perceive that, whether you feel out of control, so you start needing to control the outside world so that you feel in control inside, so you develop OCD, whether you start escaping to your head and distracting yourself with things, ADHD, or something else. So you start becoming overreactive, or sometimes you develop personality disorder. I mean, there's so many things. Like I said, official diagnosis I don't have other than the anxiety and mild depression, but I've looked at so many things, and to a certain extent or another, they all made sense years ago.
Mhm.
And I think when people don't have a diagnosis, they start looking at all these different diagnoses because that's where the focus of society lies. And they think, oh, do I have anxiety? Do I have borderline personality disorder? Am I bipolar? Do I have ADHD? And they start looking for something they can belong to. I think that goes back to that feeling, that need to belong, to say, okay, I have this, so at least I can explain why I don't feel okay.
Yeah.
Where what's really needed is to actually look inside yourself and to look into the past, your childhood, and what happened, which is why I work with hypnotherapy, and to understand what went wrong. To understand the trauma that happened to you. When I say trauma, I don't mean like big trauma, big T trauma, as we call it in therapy, which is abuse or serious things. It could be very, very small T trauma, which is not so small at all, such as criticism, neglect, and so on. This is actually can be bigger, more important than anything else. We don't compare trauma, of course, but it could be anything. It could be something that is perceived by the person as very small. And so many of my clients say, well, nothing really happened to me. And I was like that as well. Nothing really happened to me. I had good parents, nothing really happened to me. Like I wasn't abused and none of that stuff happened. Why don't I feel normal? And again, it's about that the very, very early years, attachment, attunement, you know, and small t traumas that happen to you, or that lack of attachment, proper attachment and attunement, like Dr. Gabamata says, that sets the condition for all these different disorders, quote unquote, to develop.
Yeah. So, with going back to ADHD for a second, do you see ADHD as a disability?
I do not see it as disability. No, I see it as a different kind of ability. I see it as I always say, it's genius in disguise. And again, I hold the view that Dr. Gabamati often talks about. So it's all about you, that sensitivity you're born with, and then the environment you grow up in, which again is kind of that lack of a proper attachment and attunement of the child growing up, and that sets the stage for ADHD. So it's the inborn sensitivity coupled with the environmental factors that happened, and then your brain develops differently. I don't see it as a disability. On the contrary, how can anyone see it as disability when all the great people in the world are said to have ADHD? And all the inventors, the artists, the creators of the world, they have some sort of ADHD, or you know, all they're said to be autistic or something neurodivergent. You have to think differently to create something big. So why is that seen as a disability? It probably doesn't fit the norm, you know, if we see all those kind of ways of thinking as a you know, as a bell curve where most people converge to the median, and they're all kind of normal neurotypical people, but it's those outliers at the end that actually change the world. So I definitely don't see it as a disability. Yes, there are things that can be difficult to deal with initially and can make you feel like, oh, why can't it just be normal? But once you set on that journey to heal, to learn how to make the best of your brain. So I don't know what you coach people with, but for example, I tend to not do anything that I'm not great at or that I don't like doing. I just outsource it.
Yeah.
And why would you do anything that's boring? Right? But we live in a society which teaches us that you need to do all this boring stuff. Even if you don't like it, you need to do it. You need to do great at everything in school, even if it's not your thing. Why? Why is that the norm? It doesn't make any sense at all. Why will we not all focus on what we enjoy doing and therefore be permanently in that state of flow? In fact, again, research shows that being in a state of flow, which is the hyper focus in ADHD. So we know with ADHD, we have the tendency, we get distracted easily, but we also have a tendency to hyper focus in something, to be completely absorbed in something that we find fascinating, really interesting, really engaging.
Yeah.
And that's also a state of flow. So by focusing on what you love doing, you are in that constant state of flow, and then no ADHD, or no negative signs of ADHD. So it's just about finding your thing and being in that constant state of flow.
Yeah, no, it makes complete sense. I mean, I've said before on the podcast, I like asking that question because, you know, you get a range of different answers. Most people do say they don't see it as a disability, and there are some that do. And obviously, every opinion is valid. Obviously, as I've said before, I don't see it as a disability for many of the reasons you've said. It's interesting what you're saying about the outsourcing as well, because I have this argument with people quite a lot, not clients or anything, as in people around me, where they don't seem to understand. Again, like you said, they say you've got to be able to do everything, whether you enjoy it or not, and it just doesn't seem logical to me, because if you don't enjoy doing something, or you're not good at it, or both, then I don't see the point in doing it. And yeah, I try and outsource as much as I can for things like that. I mean, if I'm just not good at something and I don't enjoy it, then there's just no motivation for me to do that whatsoever. But as you've said, with a hard focus, there's plenty of things. If you are good at it and you really enjoy it, then you can really thrive, and then that can be the superpower side of it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, totally understand that. Obviously there are challenges that come with anything, but that's the point. There's, whether you're ADHD or not, you're going to get certain challenges. I'll probably offend a few people with this, but people who are not ADHD, not neurodiverse, nothing, I kind of think it might be a bit of a boring life to live at times, but that's obviously not the case for everyone. But I've seen it firsthand with people I know who do the same job all their life and sort of have no interests or whatever, and just live to work sort of thing. And I've seen that many times, and yeah, so obviously I'd rather not be like that. I'd hate that. So I'd rather have the challenges that come with ADHD, but all the benefits that come with it as well. So yeah.
Exactly. And again, the challenges, a lot of them can be helped. So when I work with people, I always teach them there's a healing element, which you look in the past and you literally change, reframe your mind. We know it's possible from neuroplasticity. We know that the brain is always changing. So we can actually change a lot of those connections that harm you. So for example, being hypersensitive to rejection, that is something that can completely be healed. We don't need a rejection sensitivity dysphoria or any those kind of diagnoses. That's completely nonsensical. Yes, you're hypersensitive to rejection because of what happened in your early childhood, because you felt rejected as a baby growing up. That makes perfect sense. But you don't need a diagnosis for that. You just need to heal that, change that, reframe that in your mind, and that's the therapy part of it. Then you cope with certain things like outsource anything, or you manage certain things such as outsource anything that's boring, because probably your dopamine levels will still be not enough for things that are boring. Although I have noticed both for me and my clients an improvement in that as well. So I am more capable of doing things I don't enjoy now than I used to be without actually forcing myself to do it. But again, I don't see the point in it. As a business owner, I don't see the point in doing something that takes me longer, that I don't enjoy doing, when my only job is to serve people and to work on my business, grow my business, sell, and so on and so forth, and not to do the other tasks. And then there's the coaching part, which is the kind of, again, strategies to cope with certain situations and things, and managing your time and so on, or motivating yourself with certain things that you do have to do, and you cannot outsource and so on. But yeah, again, like why do we see, as why do people say that you have to do everything? That just doesn't make any sense at all. And you can see things from so many different angles, right? You can always explain everything. It's just that most people assume that what society teaches us, that's the norm. You have to do everything. You have to clean your own house. Well, no, you don't. If you don't enjoy it, you can actually get someone to do that for you.
Exactly, yeah.
And when you think different, and actually, but maybe it's a good thing that we don't fit into society, because that drives you to create something different. Right? Like someone once said, everything around you is created by people who thought out of the box. And so many people, Da Vinci, Thomas Edison, Einstein, all of these people are said to have had ADHD or some sort of neurodivergent condition. They thought differently.
Yeah, exactly. And as you said before, there's so many. More often than not, they had one of these things: ADHD, autism, etc. So yeah.
Otherwise, you would just do the job for 40 years and do nothing else. It drives you to do something different. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So a few random questions now, just because. So what's your favorite color, if you have a favorite color, that is?
I'm wearing it right now, and is this kind of rose, kind of gentle, what is the official name? I don't even know. Rose pink. I used to wear a lot of red, but then I prefer this kind of rose pink color.
Is there any sort of particular reason behind it, or is it just that you like it?
I just find it very gentle and nice. I think red used to make me feel more confident. which I think makes sense. I mean, I do work with other coaches and therapists a lot, and one of them, I work with a stylist, and I'm getting into how colors make you feel and what they do for you and so on. And I think probably back then I needed the reds to bring out that confidence in me, and now I don't need that so much anymore. I also rather have something more a softer tone. And yeah, I mean, I like black as well because it's stylish. It's hard to pick one, but since I'm wearing this today, I'll go for rose pink. Yeah. And I do love wearing that piece.
Yeah, I understand. So do you have any special interests? Or do you even use that term?
Everything I do is, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say, do you have any? And if so, what are they? Yeah.
Any special interests? Yeah. Since I know and it's about ADHD and I celebrate it, and since I've become a business owner rather than an employee and so on, and since I started living my best life, everything I do has to have meaning. I mean, people with ADHD a lot of times are very intolerant to small talk and things that just are not interesting, obviously. So everything I do is my interest. So I don't really separate between work and hobbies, like my work is my hobby and vice versa. And I love what I do. But I guess if I had to pick one, what I do, I'm learning to sing, which I've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I didn't have much of a voice growing up. It was just kind of shut inside me. So I'm just learning to open that up because I love it. I'm learning to play the keyboard as well. So I only started a few years ago. But I know of people who start at 70, so I don't think it's ever too late to pursue your passions. Yeah, so I'm learning to play the keyboard, and even more importantly, probably to me, I'm learning to sing. Not very good at it so far, but I absolutely love it, and I hope one day to prove that you can start late and still be good at something, at a skill like that, such as singing. And yeah, that's my special interest, I guess. Otherwise,
yeah. I'm sorry, go on.
No, go on. You go on.
No, I understand that, and I fully agree. You don't have to learn it when you're young, and yeah, I mean, like with the singing, like the more, I think, because I can't, because I've always been interested in that, but never thought about it, just never tried it all. So I think with ADHD, there's the potential, like there's things you think you can do, but you just never do it, and then at some point in your life, you just think, right, I'm just going to do it now. So yeah, maybe it could be something that you actually excel in. Same with like painting and things like that, because a lot of us tend to be quite creative. Like I've never painted in my life other than when I've had to at school, but I could visualize it. It's just actually doing it. So I know there's potential for doing it. Whether I could ever do it, I don't know. But I think, yeah, you can start at any point. And I think once you know you've got ADHD and whatever, it can spur you on to think, actually, no, look at all these people who have done things later in life, and use that as a motivation, I guess.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, well, if you ever wanted to, I can recommend people. My mom's a painter, and actually, that's a great point. I think it's important to mention. All people with ADHD are creative, and I believe when you don't express that creative energy, well, we're all creative to begin with, but perhaps more so when you have ADHD or autism or some neurodivergence. And when you don't express that when you suppress that, because what's the opposite of express is to depress or suppress. You either get depressed or you feel that you've suppressed yourself. And that's when you start focusing on all these conditions. I have ADHD, I have this, I have that. It's just that energy inside you that's not expressed in the right way. And so, yes, I believe you definitely can paint if you want to, or sing if you want to. I never expressed any creativity until I was 30, until I was diagnosed, pretty much, because I had suppressed all of that. I was very left-brained, worked in corporate IT, very left-brained, nothing creative. I didn't have a single business idea. And now I have ideas all the time because I've unleashed that part of me, that creative element of me. So yes, everybody with ADHD is creative. I mean, all people are creative as well, but we are just, perhaps we have that need to express that creativity. And when you don't express it, then certain issues can develop. And I think that's a great point you made there, that often people with ADHD, we think, oh, there's something I would like to do, but maybe later, I don't know if I can, and so on. Again, it's because perhaps early on you've been told you shouldn't do that, or you've been told you should focus on something else, and you suppress that. So again, it's about uncovering all these limits that you've imposed, first in society, family, school, whoever imposed on you, and then you start imposing on yourself. And I said, oh, maybe I shouldn't be a painter. I can't be a painter because I should be something else. Says who? Right? So it's all about coming back to your true self and doing what you truly love. And that's the difference, I think, between all those famous people, because they said, well, the hell with the rest of the world. I don't care what they think. I'm going to focus on what I truly love. That's the difference between those people and the people who are still struggling and suffering, who haven't found their passion, and they focus on the negative sides of ADHD, of autism, of whatever else there is. And yeah, I mean, like I said, my mom's a painter, and she gets distracted easily and all those things. So there are all these symptoms, but she never felt the need to have any, it's not even a thought to have any diagnosis, because she has her purpose and passion. That's what she lives for. And I think we all need one thing that drives us forward, that one thing to live for, which is inside of us, which is part of us, not a person or a family or children. It's something that is your passion and purpose, and that will drive the rest of your life. And then you won't feel bored again either, because that's another big thing. Boredom with ADHD, and that's again a sign of not doing what you love. I used to be that way. I used to say, oh, I'm bored by this, I don't like this, because I wasn't doing what I love. And now I don't use that word ever again.
That's good. It's good that you've figured that out and got to that place, because obviously a lot of people with ADHD aren't in that place, because they're suppressing it, etc., or they're not aware of all the good things that can come with it.
Yeah. And that's what we need to raise more awareness of, all the good things that come with it.
Exactly. Yeah. So on the celebrity side of it, I keep forgetting to add this bit in, actually, which is quite a big thing. But the question is, if you could meet any celebrity or famous person from the past, I keep forgetting to add that bit in, so I will make sure I do that. Who would that be and why? And you can pick a few people if you want to, or if you can't think of anyone. There might not be anyone that you'd like to meet. So it could be famous. It could be someone from the past. It could be someone from today. Yeah. You can always come back to it.
You say from the past, so you had in mind someone who's not with us anymore, or could it be anyone?
It could be anyone from history, including today.
Including today. Okay. Right. Okay. That's just shifted my thinking. See, it's funny. See how one phrase, one word can completely shift your thinking. Because I was thinking someone can actually meet, and the first thing that came up was Tony Robbins. I don't know why. I just like the energy of him. Then, of course, I thought of Dr. Gabor Mate, because I think he's absolute genius, especially when it comes to ADHD and in addictions and trauma. I just absolutely adore his work. So it's really hard to pick one. Then I don't know. Then you said from the past, so they don't need to be with us anymore. So I mean, then I think of Da Vinci, who was absolute genius on both the left and the right brain, kind of the mathematics of it and the art. So I just want to see how he thinks, because I believe left and right brain are this different expressions of the same thing, because mathematics is art and art is mathematics. So I would love to see how a person like that thinks, combining those those two sides that we so insist on separating. Yeah, it's really hard to pick one, but yeah, I would
pick a few. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I say, adding in the past bit, people from the past just completely changes dynamic of it. I mean, even asking that question, some people struggle with it, some know straight away. So it's good to see a
Yeah.
range of different answers. So
That's a great.
say that again, sorry.
It's a great question. Yeah, all of your questions, I love them.
So yeah, there's a few things I picked up on from what we're talking about. So whereabouts are you based? Obviously in the UK, whereabouts is it that you're based?
In the UK, I travel a lot these days. In the UK, I'm in near London, just above St. Albans a lot these days. And sometimes I travel back home or travel to other places. Yeah, always traveling these days. Always
Yeah.
on the go.
And you was so you're from Bulgaria originally, you mentioned. So how was, because you touched on this a little bit earlier, how was that in terms of your upbringing? So like in relation to ADHD, I'd imagine there was like virtually zero sort of knowledge of neurodiversity, mental health. Is it, do you find it very different to over here? How do you find that sort of dynamic in terms of how it's different?
It is very different. Yes, there is not so much awareness. It's more talked about these days, with, when it comes to children, especially. When I was
Yeah.
growing up, I had a lot of anxiety symptoms, such as migraines or, tummy aches, which we know now, and we probably didn't know back then, that there are symptoms of anxiety in children. And I was just kind of different and staying away from everyone. And I've been brought to neurologists and things, and they said there's nothing wrong with her. It's physically, there was nothing wrong with me. So
Yeah.
no one ever thought of, for better or worse, no one ever thought of diagnosing me with anything. And I say for better or worse because on the one hand, it may make you feel like, oh, it's okay, we can look for solutions. On the other hand, putting a label on a child isn't always the best idea, because that can make you feel very different. That's what I observe within children, especially teenagers, when they get an ADHD diagnosis as teenagers, that can actually really harm their mental health. Again, depending on how the people around them, like you
Yeah.
asked me a great question earlier, what kind of support did you receive from both friends and family and also from the system? So it depends on how the people around you see it. It can harm you actually if you're labeled with something. But yeah, it is very different in Bulgaria. I myself, not only within the ADHD space, but in general, I feel different there, as I'm a different person slightly. I mean, I've lived in 5 different countries, which is probably an ADHD thing, to
Yeah.
always want to be where you're not. So I went to Germany for my bachelor degree, then I went to Italy, then I went back home, then I went to Germany again, then I came to UK. So I've been around Europe. I miss a country. I think I lived in Luxembourg as well for months. So yeah, it's different everywhere. There is a huge emphasis on mental health in the UK, which I think is great. There is a huge support. As much as we say, oh, it takes so long to get a diagnosis in the NHS, which is not so great, at least we talk about it. And that's great. There's a rising awareness of mental health. I think if I may say, what I think can be better though, is to again focus on healing that, and focusing on exploring what went wrong, and focusing on encouraging that difference rather than labeling and diagnosis and so on. So yeah, I mean, a lot of people I work with, they don't even have a diagnosis. They just are self-diagnosed, and it doesn't matter as long as you look into solving what's in your way.
Yeah.
That's okay. You have to actually have a diagnosis. The label is only good to help you explain things, but then you need to move away from it. You definitely need to move away from it. So many people with ADHD, I see this. I have ADHD and I struggle and I take medication, they help, but they don't help with everything. Yes, of course, that is the case, because you need to do the self-work, the inner work, the healing work. Yeah. Sorry, I digress from your question again.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, just on the sort of how you talk about different countries, etc. I mean, I've only ever lived in the UK, so I can only base on what knowledge I have. But I do feel like here I think we are at the forefront in terms of making progress with mental health neurodiversity compared to most other countries.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, like in America, I think we're ahead of them. I think there's a lot of people talking about autism, ADHD in America, but a lot of the wrong things are being said from what I see. Not everyone, of course, but I think we're in a better position right now compared to other countries. So yeah.
I agree. I think there's more emphasis on the good things here than there is in America. And surely in the rest of Europe, it's not such a big topic. So we're definitely, I mean, the UK and the US, there's high awareness of mental health. And when it comes to neurodiversity, yes, I think we are definitely on the forefront. Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's a great place to be, to grow that awareness. And I'm sure that 10 years down the line, it will be different. It will be even more positive.
Definitely, yeah. I think it will take quite a while I think it will take years to get completely there, but I mean, I've noticed the changes that are happening year by year, how it is improving. So, like you say, in 10 years' time, it will become quite a bit different to now. So yeah, I mean, you're still going to get people who won't accept any of it, but that number will be decreasing over time, I think. So just I mean, you talked about working for yourself, having your business, etc. Did that all happen after you got diagnosed? Is that all fair in the last several years? And was it, because obviously I don't know what else you've done. So working for yourself, was it just in what you're doing now with the therapy, with the coaching, etc., or has there been other things as well?
Yeah, thank you. And I love how you are trying to put it all chronologically. I exactly think this in the same way. I just want to have the whole picture. All the pieces of the puzzle. Yes. Yeah, it started. Okay, so when so I can give you a brief overview from the beginning, and I can also talk about my entrepreneurial journey. I didn't become an entrepreneur until after diagnosis. Yes. I, growing up and, thinking about what I want to do, I thought about different things, but I mean, like I said, I was good at school. I was good in every subject. I don't know how, because now I can only focus on what I love doing. So if anything, my ADHD is kind of more pronounced now than it was back then.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what I wanted to do. And funnily enough, I mean, I didn't and I did, because I was always interested in the mind, and I was thinking about being a psychiatrist, but I wasn't sure about medicine. I, didn't want to kind of see all the other stuff and work with dead bodies and all that. And I've also I had awareness of ADHD, perhaps subconsciously, because I wasn't convinced that's something I want to do, and I didn't know if I would stick with it. And that's a lot of kind of like ADHD thing, to stick with something. So I thought, okay, maybe not medicine, because that's obviously a big commitment. I don't want to do that. I didn't know about psychology at the time, or therapy. And then I thought about being a film director, because I kind of love that whole creative side of things. Two very different professions. And guess what I did? I went and studied economics and social sciences, because I went for the safe choice.
Yeah.
I went for the safe choice, the thing that would give me many options. I didn't feel that I could run my own business. I wanted to. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And after my bachelor degree, again, I wanted to explore the world. I wanted to do all these different things, probably a little bit unrealistic, very, very dreamlike ideas I had. And arguments with my parents at the time, and who said, no, you have to study. And not in that sense. I mean, they never actually told me what to do, but you know, they channel me what made sense. And I agree it makes sense. But it wasn't what I truly wanted to do. So I went and did a master's degree in economics and all that stuff. And it just, you know, I went into a direction which wasn't me, unfortunately. And so after that, I went into IT. I was an auditor first for a year. Then I went into corporate IT. I was an IT consultant, which was fun. You know, it filled all my dopamine kind of receptors, and it was engaging enough, was busy enough to provide that dopamine and to not allow me to think about much else. So it wasn't quite fulfilled, but it was fun. It was glamorous. I traveled in different countries in Europe being a consultant. I traveled 4 days a week at some point for 3 years of my life. And it was, you know, it was fine, but I had started suppressing who I really was. All those dreams, psychiatry, you know, filming and creative things, I had to put them to the side to do what makes sense, to make enough money. And I did make enough money. I made a lot of money, but I wasn't fulfilled. And it wasn't until I came to London back in 2014 that I changed jobs from being a consultant to being a business analyst for a company. So I was more stable. I wasn't traveling anymore. And also I had time to look around, and I felt bored. Right? I wasn't burnt out. I was just bored. I had time to look around and think, that's not what I want to do. All these people around me looking to get, just waiting to get their pension, and they have been here for 20 years and they're going to be here for another 20 years. That's not me. Oh my God, that's horrifying. There's so many things I want to do in my life. And there was a trigger. There was like a personal kind of catalyst. Let's not call it trigger, but there was a personal catalyst that propelled me. You know, sometimes, as we say, when you're so much on the wrong track, the universe will just do something. Life will just push you in the right direction because you're just so off track. You just have to push back. And so this personal thing that was a catalyst. So I eventually left my job. Like I said, I was very stressed. That's when I got the diagnosis, both diagnosed anxiety and ADHD. And that's after I got the medication, I changed my jobs for another year. I tried to fit in into that corporate world. And when I started on my, what I call the alternative healing journey with emotional freedom technique, and I started actually feeling different inside, not because of medication, but because something shifted in me, and psychologically, energetically, emotionally, in every way you can imagine, physically even. You know, because we know that trauma is in the body. So when you let go, you actually feel different. And after that first experience with EFT, that's when I started remembering. And that's when I started, you know, remembering I wanted to work for myself. So I started, first I had a startup for 1 year. Didn't work out, didn't have the right team, spend a lot of money, you know, but it's a great experience. And then I tapped in the creative side. I did creative things as well, such as acting and things. So I basically caught up. I caught up on everything I've ever wanted to do I had ever wanted to do in my life, the creative side, the business side. So it's been a journey of 5 years maybe, until actually I started being successful at what I do, also financially, and actually channeling it all in. It was a journey of exploration, which I think was just necessary because I had been suppressed for I had suppressed my own desires for so long. So it was just a journey of discovery. And now I do coaching and therapy for ADHD, especially on a focus on relationships and kind of inner self-confidence, self-esteem. But I also work with business owners. I work with other coaches and practitioners to build their practice and their program and websites, and kind of that's my way of helping more people, because I use my IT skills to help other practitioners so I can help their clients indirectly. And because I published my own book in 2020, I also help people write books. So I do 3 different things, and I'm very, very happy to be doing different things.
That sounds great. Sounds great. Yeah, I totally resonate with a lot of what you said there. Like completely. So in terms of your work, is anything else you want to particularly mention other than what you've just said in terms of what you do? Is there anything else you want to mention? You don't have to. It's up to you, really.
In terms of what I do, yes. I mean, again, I work with so like I said, initially when I had the transformational journey with EFT, the first transformational experience, I thought to myself, the world has to know about it. So that's when I started helping other therapists and coaches. And then I realized I actually am always going towards these alternative approaches. Why we call them alternative is beyond me, because that's actually the stuff that really helps. Whereas traditional things, not so much, not really. I mean, they help with the symptoms of things, but don't really go to the root cause. So I am a hypnotherapist. I'm an NLP practitioner, EFT practitioner, and RTT, rapid transformational therapy practitioner. So I combine all of these practices, all of these ways of helping and healing to bring about transformational change. You know, I used to look at these words, transformational change, and think, what does that even mean? You know, it sounds so wishy-washy and like glamorous and just nice words, but it really is a transformation when you have the courage to look into yourself, to really look, because I was afraid of that initially. You know, I was afraid to do hypnotherapy because I was like, well, I'm not sure what I'm going to find in there, you know, looking into my past. And I say that because I know some people perhaps listening, or some people would be afraid of that. And I was afraid in the beginning too, but at some point I had the courage to do it, and everything happens in the right time. And I had the courage to do it. And I started understanding, because with hypnotherapy, you look back into the past, you remember things long suppressed. Like every time I have a session, my client then opens their eyes and says, oh, I had completely forgotten about that memory. And it's because the brain is designed to protect us. So it represses what's painful, but that painful memory is still eating you up inside, literally. It's in your body, making you react emotionally to something. You don't consciously know why, but it's still making you respond in a feel rejected, be fearful of abandonment, be overly sensitive to certain topics, whatever it may be. And you don't even know it's affecting you, but you don't even know why. And so by, you know, in the session, we do a regression, you know, to the childhood memory, you remember, and then you're able to reframe it, change it. And when you change how you see it, and you change how you feel about it, you literally change, you transform your experience of the world around you. Because when you change, as we know, the world around you also changes. So I'm very, very big on healing, and particularly looking into early childhood years, or I mean, with regression, with hypnotherapy, we look into whatever comes up. We don't say it has to be the first 5, 6, 7 years. Be in the womb, could be, you know, before birth, could be after, could be a late trauma, but it usually relates to the first formative years. So I'm very, very big on that, looking into that, so that you are able to change it, and therefore you change the way you see the world, and therefore your world changes. And I believe that's what it's all about. I mean, that's the majority of healing that takes place. And as I wrote in my book, like the first is that self-awareness, the second is commitment, because you may start feeling uncomfortable as you start being on that healing journey. So you have to commit to the process. You have to be ready to, again, look inside, to heal, to change, to transform yourself. Because, you know, all healing is actually self-healing. We are only, as therapists, we're only here to facilitate the process, to guide you through the process. It's about that responsibility you have to take upon yourself, because it's not your fault what happened, what your childhood and upbringing was, or what happened in school, but it's your responsibility to change. That's what I always like to say. And if you're ready to take that responsibility, if you have a drive to change, miracles can happen. And it's not necessarily going to be a smooth journey. It wasn't for me. It definitely wasn't for me. I talk like this now, but I've had times when I think, oh my God, I had all this healing and I still react in this way. I still don't feel happy in this area of my life. Great. That's your indication that there's more healing or coaching or therapy or self-work necessary. general word. And coaching as well. I mean, sometimes it's coaching techniques that you need and therapy, but if you don't like something, you can change it, and you have to find an approach that works for you, and you can change that. That's what I believe now. And again, it's a roller coaster of a journey, but instead of going, that once I wrote a post, you have to get off that merry-go-round of life, going through a job, waiting for a pension, having kids, and then waiting to die, to go off that merry-go-round and get on the roller coaster, because that's what a truly amazing life is, if you want that.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. So a few other things I want to say before we start wrapping it up. I know you touched on perfectionism. I don't know if it was in this podcast or just for when we were speaking. So like the OCD side of it, perfectionism and other things. Is there anything you want to specifically talk about in that area?
Yeah, the OCD specifically. The OCD, yeah, that's something I have that was unlocked as a result of the stress a few years ago. And I will say that has been the most persistent in me. And sometimes I still want things to happen at this time and that time. It's a need for perfection, and also to a large extent, it's again that about the high cortisol levels. So I take a lot of supplements as well these days, such as amino acids, fish oil, and things like that. They help a lot with ADHD. That's probably important to mention, actually. So thank you for bringing it up. ADHD, as well as anything else that you may experience, whether it's OCD, anxiety. With OCD, it's said to be highly correlated with lack of serotonin.
Yeah.
So again, I take supplements such as that boost serotonin. I don't know if it's appropriate to mention. And again, I don't want anyone to think that, I'm going to go get off my medication now and just do supplements. Very, very important not to do that, especially without consulting a doctor, without doing it. Very important to consult your doctor, or to do things carefully. Anything to do with medication supplements. But yeah, OCD is said to be correlated with lack of serotonin. Low serotonin correlated with elevated levels of cortisol. Why do we have elevated level of cortisol, the stress hormone? Well, because of that sustained, continued stress we experienced either before birth in the womb or after birth. Actually, again, a stress in the mother before birth highly correlated with ADHD, especially in the last months of pregnancy. Earlier stress as well. So again, all these things go together, because a lot of it goes down to that early stressful environment, which created those high levels of cortisol. So again, elevated levels of cortisol, low serotonin, need to control, because you feel out of control in your specific environment. OCD develops. Need to escape, because I just can't deal with it. I'm just going to escape to my head and start daydreaming to a beautiful different life. ADHD develops, right? Or both. Yeah. So again, with OCD, there's an NLP process that specifically helps with that. So again, that can be helped. There is that, and it wasn't until I started doing NLP that I actually helped myself with that as well. But also certain supplements, especially things that boost serotonin, supplements or food, or just activities that boost serotonin. Yeah. That perfectionism is the inability to relax, or anxiety is the ability to relax. So we need to learn to relax, and again, more of the good stuff, the serotonin, endorphins as well. Exercise, very important as well for all of these conditions. Very, very important, because again, we are biochemistry as well. So I always talk about the mental, emotional, physical, spiritual realm. So on the physical realm, we are a lot of biochemical reactions. So it is important to do the right things, which most of us already know these days. It's not rocket science. You exercise, you sleep enough. Again, very important for ADHD. Get enough good proper nutrition, supplements, because nutrition is not enough in this day and age, unfortunately. the things we eat are not enough to give us the right supplement elements we need. So yeah, so for perfectionism and OCD, yeah, supplements, serotonin boosters, and just teaching yourself to relax. Breath work as well, very, very, very good for anxiety and or OCD. And there are specific exercises that I teach. I have actually a free Facebook group where me and my colleague, we specialize in ADHD, and we teach a lot of that kind of breathwork stuff.
Yeah.
And also supplements. Yeah. But again, all these things are related. All these things are related. OCD, perfectionism, ADHD, they're all related.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know if that answers your question. Did you want to hear something different?
No, it's fine. No, it's there's no set answer that's needed. So yeah, no, I think it's all informative and yeah, so that's all good.
Yeah. How do you see ADHD? I didn't. Can I just ask you a question?
How do I see it? Did you say how do I see it? Yeah, I mean, like I say, it does have challenges, but I think it's a lot of it is perception and like you say, the things you do. So you've mentioned like exercise, sleep, etc. Those things. So all those things you can do to turn it more into the superpower side of it. I do know a lot of people will say it's a bad thing, and I don't agree with that. I think that's just how, if you're not in the right, you need to create your own environment that you can thrive in, I believe, and obviously do the things you need to do to get the goodness out of it. So like you say, the exercise, etc. I think being positive, I do understand there's like kind of toxic positivity where people like it's like a fake thing. So I'm not saying that, but I think it's better to be positive in general, because we haven't got much time on this earth. So I don't see the point in being negative. Obviously, there will be times there will be things you don't like. You'll have bad days and stuff like that. That's fine, but it's kind of wasting your time in my mind being like that because there's no point doing that. So there's always positive in something. If something bad happens, there's a positive there. If you get fired from your job, for example, I mean, I don't want to have a job anyway. I want to work for myself as I am doing. But if you had a job, you got fired, well, that's a negative in some sense. But then the positive, it opens up something else. So if you break up with a partner or whatever, that might seem bad at the time, but then there's a positive there that you can take. So it's how you look at it, and I think it all fits in with. I mean, I'm talking about general now, but with ADHD, I do see it as a good thing. Yeah, sometimes it does my head in with things like when I can't concentrate. I've never had medication. I don't plan on having medication. Obviously, I've listened to what people have said, that the positives that come from it. I sort of like to have, I don't want to say my own mind. I don't know if that makes sense, but I kind of feel like for me, I mean,
Be yourself.
Yeah. So like I know the side effects that come with medication. I know it can have positives like a lot of things I struggle with, like focus at times and getting distracted and things that could help me with that. But then it might stifle a lot of the creativity that I have in mind. That's how I feel. I think it's a great thing for the creativity side, for coming up with different ideas, I mean, I've got that many ideas, that many different businesses I want to start, etc. So I think that is a massive benefit that comes with it. So overall, yeah, I wouldn't change it for the world. Part of me feels, well, I do get frustrated that other people who haven't got it, don't acknowledge it, understand it, or appreciate it, whatever. But then part of me thinks that's fine anyway, because if everyone had it or whatever, then life would be harder for me because I'd have more competition with the creativity side of it. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a roller coaster, as you mentioned earlier with another analogy. There may be ups and downs with it, but overall, I think the ups far outweigh the downs of it. I think.
Yeah. The more, sorry, go on.
No, I've done. Go.
Yeah, I love that beautiful summary, and I think you raised some great points there in that the medication side of things. A lot of people are afraid that it will stifle their creativity, and I would say it does happen to an extent, especially when you start healing. You can actually start feeling the negative side effects of the medication more than the positives, because when you start healing, your focus will naturally improve, your concentration, dopamine levels, all the good stuff will start coming out because your cortisol levels go down, because cortisol and dopamine serotonin, they counteract each other, right? So the more you reduce the cortisol through healing, through supplements, through exercise and so on, the more you actually allow the good stuff to come out. I'm just conscious of the time, but that's a really good point. And yeah, and it does get easier. That's one thing I want to like reassure whoever is listening to this. Like when you do the self work, and when you see, like you said, everything that happens, everything bad, quote unquote, happens, it happens for a reason. It's actually, when you see it as a good thing, or as a lesson, or as something you need to learn, or work on, that's great. Like if this person left you, great, celebrate, they weren't the right person for you. There's definitely someone more suitable for you out there. You probably weren't happy anyway. If you got fired from a job, the amount of times I wished I got a severance pack. I got paid to leave my work. I didn't actually left with no money because I left. So that's a great thing. It allows to start your business if you get fired from your job and you get money for it. For example, this is just examples. Or if you get fired, you get no money. Okay, great. You have all the time in the world to do what you truly love doing, or to do self-work. So yes, everything that's negative can be seen as positive. And there is a term called spiritual bypassing, where everything is fine, everything is positive. You have to do the inner work as well. Yeah, if you just are positive, everything is fine, and I don't need to do any work, that's not great either. It can be too much in that sense, like you said, but you see it as a positive. You work on yourself, and then you do the inner work, and then things just get better. And the roller coaster ride actually gets easier, smoother, and the ups and downs are not so huge, or at least you would enjoy them more. But I would also say they're not so huge, because it's never what happens to you, how you see it inside of you, right? As Dr. Gabamata says as well, it's the trauma isn't what happens outside of you, it's how you internalize it. And when you have grown up in an environment which wasn't supportive, you start to internalize all the negatives, you feel down yourself, you kind of wallow in this pain for a long time. When you heal, that doesn't happen anymore. You recover, you build that resilience, and you recover from things much more quickly, and you enjoy the good things a lot more. So the depths are not so deep anymore, and the highs are not so excessively high to a point you feel depleted. You just feel more happy and fulfilled all the time, more kind of normal. But yes, celebrate your creativity, and don't try to be normal.
Yeah,
I love that quote. Why try to fit in when you're born to stand out? And I think that's what ADHD or any neurodivergent condition is all about.
Yeah, no,
you're born to stand out. Yeah, so celebrate it, and do that.
Yeah, I think
Stop
trying to what, sorry?
Stop trying to fit in, because you're born to stand out. That's what we're born to do. So stop trying to fit in and focus on how you can stand out.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the whole process, it doesn't happen overnight. So it is a process that takes however many years or whatever, from whichever stage you're at. But like I say, it does get better if you stay positive and do the things that'll help you to get to where you need to be.
Yeah, it helps to be solution focused. So when something bad happens, everything is a state of mind. The idea that it's a condition you need to live with for the rest of your life and never do anything bad is a state of mind, right? The idea that you can help it is a state of mind. And so when something bad happens, instead of saying, "Oh, why did this happen to me?" So saying, "Okay, what can I learn from this? How can I change it? How can I not do that next time, or not react like this next time, or not attract this kind of person next time," whatever it may be, or not going to this job, etc. See how you can help yourself by working with someone like you, for example, or it's just or just working, doing self work. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I fully agree. So is there anything else you wanted to add before we say bye for today?
I think we can talk about this for another 2 hours. I'm really enjoying this conversation. So really, I'm really grateful to you for inviting me. And yeah, I mean, a lot of us with ADHD, we distract ourselves and try to make other people happy. Focus on making yourself feel happy, fulfilled, and whole first before you try and do that for the rest of the world.
Yeah, no, I
That's
fully
really
agree. Fully agree.
Yeah.
Right, well, thanks for being on the podcast. Really appreciate it. And thanks for everyone that's listened. So thanks everyone. We'll see you again soon.
Yeah. Thank you, Ben. I really appreciate that.